Winning the lottery is the ultimate fantasy. Instant wealth, financial freedom, the ability to quit your job and live however you want. Millions of people play every week, dreaming of the moment when their numbers come up and their lives change forever. Then there were these lottery winners who proved that sudden wealth without financial literacy, discipline, or good judgment can destroy your life faster than poverty ever could. And that the phrase, money can't buy happiness, exists because people keep learning it the hardest way possible. Buckle up for a devastating tour through lives ruined by answered prayers. 1. In 2002, West Virginia construction worker Jack Whitaker won $314.9 million in the Powerball lottery, the largest undivided lottery jackpot in American history at the time. Whitaker chose the lump sum of $113.4 million after taxes. Within a year, his granddaughter's boyfriend was found dead in his house. Within 2 years, his granddaughter Brandy died of a drug overdose at age 17. Whitaker blamed her death on the money that made drugs easily accessible. Thieves repeatedly broke into his car and home, on one occasion stealing $545,000 in cash he'd inexplicably left in his vehicle at a strip club. Whitaker was arrested multiple times for DUI and assault. His daughter died in 2009. His wife left him. Hundreds of lawsuits were filed against him. He gave millions to churches and charities, but also spent recklessly at strip clubs and casinos. By 2016, Whitaker said the money had brought him nothing but misery, and he wished he'd torn up the ticket. His house burned down in 2020. Whitaker died in 2020, having lost his fortune, his family, and any happiness the money might have brought. His story became the cautionary tale about lottery curses, demonstrating that $318 million couldn't protect him from tragedy, addiction, theft, and the destruction of everything he valued. The man who won the biggest jackpot ended up wishing he'd never bought the ticket. 2. In 1988, William Bud Post won $16.2 million in the Pennsylvania lottery. Within weeks, his brother hired a hitman to kill him, hoping to inherit the winnings. Post's landlady sued him for a third of the winnings, claiming they'd agreed to share if either won. Post's girlfriend successfully sued him for part of the money. Post spent wildly on houses, cars, boats, and airplanes, despite having no experience managing wealth. He invested in failed businesses, including a restaurant and an auto racing team. Within a year, Post was $1 million in debt. He declared bankruptcy, and a judge ordered him to pay back some of his spending. Post spent time in jail for assault and conspiracy to commit murder after allegedly plotting to kill a bill collector. By 1993, Post was living on Social Security disability of $450 per month and food stamps. He died in 2006 essentially broke, having lost all $16.2 million. Post later said, "I wish it never happened." It was totally a nightmare. His lottery win brought him attempted murder by a family member, multiple lawsuits, bankruptcy, criminal charges, and a life worse than before he'd won. The $16.2 million disappeared within years, leaving Post with nothing but regret. 3. In 1997, Billy Bob Harrell Jr. won $31 million in the Texas lottery. Harrell was a devout Pentecostal Christian who'd been working multiple jobs to support his family. After winning, he quit his jobs, bought houses and cars for family and friends, donated generously to his church, and gave money to anyone who asked. Within months, Harrell was overwhelmed by people asking for money, hundreds of requests daily from strangers, friends, and family. His marriage fell apart under the pressure. He made bad investments. The constant request for money depressed him. Less than 2 years after winning, Harrell locked himself in his bedroom and shot himself to death. Before he died, he told a financial advisor, "Winning the lottery is the worst thing that ever happened to me." His family was devastated, and the fortune was divided among his survivors. Harrell's suicide shocked his community and became another cautionary tale about lottery curses. The $31 million had brought him 2 years of overwhelming pressure, destroyed his marriage, and ultimately drove him to suicide. The man who thought winning would solve all his problems discovered that wealth created problems he couldn't survive. 4. In 2005, Evelyn Adams won the New Jersey lottery not once, but twice. $5.4 million total across both wins. Adams was hailed as the luckiest woman in America for winning twice. She immediately began gambling at Atlantic City casinos, spending entire days at slot machines. She gave money generously to family and friends. She bought cars and gifts impulsively. She made bad investments. The casino gambling consumed most of her winnings. She later admitted she couldn't stop playing slots and would gamble until her money ran out. Within 15 years, Adams had lost all $5.4 million. She moved to a trailer park and took a job in a convenience store. Adams later said, "I won the American dream, but I lost it too." It was a very hard fall. It's called rock bottom. She admitted that gambling addiction had destroyed her twice-won fortune and that she'd given away too much too quickly to people who disappeared when the money ran out. Adams's double lottery win couldn't protect her from gambling addiction, and she ended up broke, working minimum wage and filled with regret about the millions she'd gambled away at casinos. 5. In 1996, Jeffrey Dampier won $20 million in the Illinois lottery. Dampier was generous with family and friends, buying houses and cars and giving cash freely. He started a gourmet popcorn business. In 2005, Dampier was kidnapped by his sister-in-law Victoria Jackson and her boyfriend Nathaniel Jackson, who demanded money. When Dampier refused or couldn't provide what they wanted, they shot him to death and left his body in a van. Victoria Jackson was Dampier's wife's sister, someone he'd trusted and helped financially. She was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. Dampier's generosity toward family had made him a target, and his murder by a family member demonstrated the dark side of lottery wealth. The $20 million didn't protect Dampier from being murdered by someone he'd helped. His generosity was repaid with betrayal and murder, and his fortune couldn't save his life. 6. In 2002, Michael Carroll won $9.7 million, about $15 million in the British National Lottery at age 19. Carroll, who'd been working as a garbage collector, called himself the Lotto Lout, and immediately began living extravagantly. He bought a mansion, spent $50,000 on gold jewelry, bought dozens of cars that he frequently crashed, and threw massive parties. Carroll gave money freely to friends and family. He snorted cocaine daily, hired prostitutes, and gambled heavily. He was arrested multiple times for drug possession and disorderly conduct. He spent over $500,000 on crack cocaine alone. Carroll claimed he spent $2,000 per day on cocaine and prostitutes at his peak. Within 8 years, all $9.7 million was gone. Carroll returned to work as a garbage collector, the same job he'd quit after winning. He later admitted the money had destroyed his life, ruined relationships, and fed addictions that nearly killed him. Carroll said winning the lottery was the worst thing that ever happened to him. The teenager who won millions ended up broke, addicted, and back at his old job, having squandered nearly $10 million on drugs, gambling, and stupidity. 7. In 2002, Laura and Roger Griffiths won $1.8 million, about $2.8 million, in the UK lottery. The couple spent lavishly on houses, cars, and a business. In 2010, their mansion burned down in a fire, destroying everything they owned, including cash and valuables they'd kept in the house. The couple blamed faulty wiring from renovations they'd done. They'd let their insurance lapse, so they received nothing. Within 2 years, they divorced. Laura ended up working as a teacher, broke and living modestly. Roger became estranged from the family. The lottery winnings that were supposed to provide security forever were completely gone within a decade, and the couple's mansion literally burned down, taking whatever wealth remained with it. The $1.8 million had brought them years of luxury, followed by fire, bankruptcy, and divorce. They ended up with nothing but memories of the wealth that had briefly been theirs. 8. In 1988, Suzanne Mullins won $4.2 million in the Virginia lottery, choosing annual payments of $190,000. Mullins immediately borrowed against future payments and ran up substantial debts. She borrowed $197,746.15 from a lending company using her lottery winnings as collateral. When sued for non-payment, Mullins claimed she had no assets because she'd already spent or given away her winnings. The court ruled she still owed the debt regardless. Mullins had co-signed a loan for her son-in-law that defaulted, and her lottery payments were garnished to pay it. Her daughter's husband was murdered, and Mullins spent heavily on legal fees. Medical bills consumed more money. Within years, Mullins was broke despite still receiving annual lottery payments. All her future money was already spoken for through debts, garnishments, and obligations. She declared bankruptcy. The $4.2 million lottery win had brought her nothing but debt, loss, and legal troubles. Mullins ended up worse off than if she'd never won, buried under obligations she couldn't meet despite millions in lottery payments. 9. In 1993, Janet Leigh won $18 million in the Missouri lottery. Leigh was generous to a fault, donating massive amounts to political campaigns, educational causes, and the Democratic Party. She gave freely to friends and family. She made poor investments. Leigh donated so much to political causes that she became a major Democratic Party donor in Missouri, hosting fundraisers and giving hundreds of thousands to campaigns. Within 8 years, all $18 million was gone. Leigh declared bankruptcy in 2001 with only $700 in assets remaining. Her generosity had consumed her entire fortune. She'd given away millions to causes and people who praised her when she had money, but disappeared when she was broke. Leigh died in 2013, having never recovered financially. The $18 million had bought her temporary influence and praise from politicians who forgot her name the moment the money ran out. Her generosity destroyed her financial security, and she died broke despite winning millions. 10. In 2002, Andrew Jack Whitaker Jr., already mentioned earlier for his $314 million win, also became a victim of theft, lawsuits, and family tragedy that destroyed his life even before his fortune was fully gone. His granddaughter's boyfriend was found dead in his home with drugs. His granddaughter Brandy died of a drug overdose. Whitaker was robbed multiple times, with thieves taking advantage of his carelessness about carrying large amounts of cash. Strip club employees and others sued him for various alleged offenses. His wife left him, his daughter died. By the end, Whitaker said the money had been a curse and that he wished he'd torn up the ticket. The $314 million had brought death, theft, lawsuits, and misery that money couldn't fix. Whitaker's story remains the most famous lottery curse tale, demonstrating that even hundreds of millions can't protect you from tragedy when wealth attracts criminals, enablers, and opportunists. 11. In 1999, Denise Rossi won $1.3 million in the California lottery and immediately filed for divorce from her husband without telling him about the winnings. For 2 years, Rossi hid the lottery win during divorce proceedings. Her ex-husband Thomas only discovered she'd won when he received a letter about lottery payments addressed to his ex-wife. He sued. The judge ruled that Denise had violated disclosure laws by hiding assets during divorce proceedings and awarded Thomas the entire $1.3 million as punishment. Denise's attempt to hide the winnings to avoid sharing resulted in her losing everything to the ex-husband she'd been trying to cheat. The lottery win that was supposed to fund her new life instead went entirely to the man she'd left. Her deception cost her the entire fortune. The $1.3 million ended up going to her ex-husband, while Denise received nothing but a legal lesson about disclosure requirements. 12. In 2002, Amanda Clayton won $1 million in the Michigan lottery. Clayton continued collecting welfare benefits, including food stamps, after winning, claiming she still needed assistance. When questioned by media about collecting benefits while being a millionaire, Clayton said, "I feel that it's okay because I have no income and I have bills to pay. I have 2 houses." Her defense was that the lottery winnings were a one-time asset, not income. Public outrage led to fraud charges. Clayton was eventually cut off from benefits. Less than 2 years after winning, Clayton died of a drug overdose at age 25. Her entire lottery winnings had disappeared, spent on drugs and living expenses. The $1 million had brought her public humiliation, legal troubles, and ultimately a drug habit that killed her. Clayton's story became a cautionary tale about lottery winners who can't handle sudden wealth and make terrible decisions. She died broke at 25 despite winning $1 million. 13. In 1997, Ibi Roncaioli won $5 million in the Canadian lottery. Her husband Joseph, a gynecologist, was initially pleased. However, Ibi began secretly giving large amounts of money to a secret lover. When Joseph discovered the affair and the fact that Ibi had given away over $2 million to her lover, he was enraged. In 2003, Joseph poisoned Ibi with injectable painkillers, killing her. He was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 7 years in prison. The lottery winnings had destroyed their marriage, led to an affair, and ultimately resulted in murder. The $5 million had brought infidelity, rage, and death. Ebe died at her husband's hands, and Joseph went to prison, all because of money that was supposed to make their lives better. The lottery fortune destroyed both of them. 14. In 1993, Willie Hurt won $3.1 million in the Michigan lottery. Within 2 years, Hurt had lost everything to crack cocaine addiction and divorce. His wife left him, and he spent virtually all his lottery money buying and using crack cocaine. Hurt's addiction consumed his entire fortune. He ended up broke, homeless, and in and out of drug rehabilitation programs. The $3.1 million lasted less than 2 years, all of it going to feed a crack addiction that the sudden wealth had enabled. Hurt's story became another cautionary tale about lottery winners whose addictions destroy them. The money that could have provided security for life instead funded an addiction that left him with nothing. By 1995, all $3.1 million was gone, and Hurt was destitute, his life destroyed by the very money that was supposed to save him. 15. In 1988, Ken Proxmire won $1 million in the Michigan lottery. He immediately moved to California and invested everything in a car business with his brothers. The business failed spectacularly. Within 5 years, all $1 million was gone. Proxmire filed for bankruptcy, divorced, and ended up working odd jobs. His investment in the car business with family members consumed the entire lottery fortune, and the business's failure left him worse off than before winning. Proxmire later said trusting family with his business decisions had been his biggest mistake. The $1 million that was supposed to fund his dreams ended up lost in a failed business venture, and Proxmire's attempt to become an entrepreneur destroyed his lottery winnings. 16. In 2006, Abraham Shakespeare won $30 million in the Florida lottery. Shakespeare was a truck driver's assistant with limited education. After winning, he was overwhelmed by people asking for money. He gave generously to friends and family. In 2009, Shakespeare befriended Doris D.D. Moore, who offered to help him manage his finances and protect him from people asking for money. Moore gradually took control of Shakespeare's assets. In April 2009, Shakespeare disappeared. In January 2010, his body was found buried under a concrete slab at a property Moore had purchased. Moore had murdered Shakespeare to steal his remaining lottery fortune. She was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Shakespeare's $30 million had made him a target, and his trust in someone who claimed to be helping him led to his murder. The lottery win that should have secured his future instead resulted in his death at the hands of a con artist who killed him for his remaining money. Shakespeare's lottery fortune couldn't protect him from being murdered for the wealth that had marked him as a target. 17. In 2001, Alex Toth and his wife Rhoda won $13 million in the Florida lottery. The couple invested heavily in real estate, buying multiple properties. They also lent money to family and friends who never repaid. They made poor investment decisions. Within years, the real estate market crashed and their properties became worthless or underwater. They couldn't meet mortgage payments on multiple properties. Foreclosures followed. Medical bills accumulated when Alex had health problems. By 2008, they were broke. Rhoda was quoted saying, "It was not worth the aggravation it caused in our family." The $13 million had brought them real estate losses, bad loans to family, and financial stress that destroyed their health. The Toths ended up broke despite winning millions. All their lottery money lost to bad investments and generosity that was never repaid. 18. In 2005, Brad Duke won $220 million in the Powerball lottery, taking a lump sum of $85 million after taxes. Duke, unusually for lottery winners, hired financial advisors immediately and invested carefully. However, Duke's goal was to reach $1 billion through investments. He invested aggressively in oil and gas ventures, real estate, and various businesses. Many investments failed. By 2010, Duke admitted he'd lost significant portions of his fortune through aggressive investments that didn't pan out as hoped. While Duke didn't lose everything like other winners on this list, his aggressive investment strategy to turn millions into billions resulted in substantial losses. Duke later said he wished he'd been more conservative, His attempt to use lottery winnings as seed capital to become a billionaire cost him millions in failed ventures. While Duke retained wealth, his story shows that even careful planning and professional advice can't guarantee success when investment goals are too aggressive. 19. In 1996, Gerald Muswagon won $10 million in the Canadian lottery. Muswagon spent lavishly on family and friends, buying houses and cars and throwing parties. He gave money freely to anyone who asked. Within 7 years, all $10 million was gone. Muswagon declared bankruptcy. He struggled with alcoholism. In 2005, Muswagon hanged himself at age 42. His family said he'd become depressed after losing all his money and being abandoned by the people he'd helped when he was wealthy. The $10 million had brought him temporary popularity and then devastating isolation when the money ran out. Muswagon's suicide was attributed to depression about losing everything and feeling used by people who'd only cared about his money. The lottery fortune that was supposed to change his life instead contributed to his death. 20. In 2002, Sharon Tirabassi won $10.5 million in the Canadian lottery. Tirabassi immediately began spending on houses, cars, designer clothes, lavish parties, and exotic trips. She gave money freely to family and friends. She made no investments. Within a decade, all $10.5 million was gone. By 2013, Tirabassi was broke, working part-time jobs and taking the bus because she couldn't afford a car. She lived in a rental house and struggled to pay bills. Tirabassi admitted she'd spent recklessly and given away too much too quickly. She said she had no regrets because she'd had fun spending the money, though she acknowledged she should have been smarter. The $10.5 million had funded a decade of luxury and then left Tirabassi right back where she started, working low-wage jobs and barely getting by. Her decade of wealth was followed by a return to poverty because she'd saved and invested nothing. 21. In 1999, Keith Goff won $9 million, about $14 million, in the British lottery. Goff began drinking heavily and using cocaine. His marriage ended. He spent recklessly on cars, parties, and drugs. Goff became known for wild behavior and drug-fueled binges. In 2010, just 11 years after winning, Goff died of a heart attack at age 58, his body weakened by years of alcohol and drug abuse. Most of his fortune was gone, consumed by addiction and divorce settlements. His sister said the lottery money had killed him by enabling his worst habits. The $9 million had brought Goff nothing but addiction, health problems, and an early death. The money that should have provided security instead funded habits that destroyed his health and shortened his life. 22. In 1997, Shefik Talmadge won $6.7 million in the Arizona lottery. Talmadge was a convicted felon who'd served time for rape. After winning, he moved to Las Vegas and spent heavily at casinos. He gambled away most of his fortune. In 2007, Talmadge died of cirrhosis and complications from alcoholism at age 60. His lottery fortune was largely gone, consumed by gambling and drinking. His family was estranged. The $6.7 million had funded a decade of gambling and alcoholism that ultimately killed him. Talmadge's past crimes had already destroyed his reputation, and the lottery money simply funded his self-destruction. He died broken alone, all his millions lost to casinos and alcohol. 23. In 2002, Harold Jr. won $27 million in the Texas lottery. Jr. was generous with family and friends, buying houses and cars. He made loans to people who never repaid him. He made poor investments. Constant requests for money overwhelmed him. His marriage ended. 2 years after winning, Jr. locked himself in his bedroom and shot himself to death. Before dying, he told a financial advisor that winning the lottery was the worst thing that ever happened to him. The $27 million had brought 2 years of overwhelming stress, destroyed his marriage, and driven him to suicide. Junior's story became one of the most tragic lottery tales, demonstrating that wealth can create unbearable pressure when everyone wants a piece of what you have. 24. In 1988, Jimmy Smith won $10 million in the New York lottery. Smith was a postal worker who immediately began spending lavishly. He gave money to family and friends. He invested in bad business ventures. He gambled heavily. Within a few years, all $10 million was gone. Smith declared bankruptcy. His generosity and poor financial decisions had consumed his entire fortune. He returned to work at low-wage jobs, having squandered millions through giving, gambling, and investing in ventures he didn't understand. The $10 million had brought him a few years of feeling wealthy, followed by decades of working minimum wage jobs and regretting the opportunities he'd wasted. 25. In 1993, Janet Leigh won $18 million in the Missouri lottery. Already mentioned, but worth emphasizing. Leigh's political donations consumed much of her fortune. She gave hundreds of thousands to the Democratic Party and various campaigns. She donated to educational causes and helped friends and family. Within 8 years, all $18 million was gone. Leigh declared bankruptcy with $700 in assets remaining. Her generosity had been extraordinary, but financially unsustainable. Politicians who'd praised her when she donated forgot her when the money ran out. Leigh died in 2013 broke, having given away an entire fortune to causes that didn't help her when she became destitute. The $18 million had bought temporary political influence that disappeared the moment her checkbook closed. 26. In 2003, Alicia Battle won $2 million in the Georgia lottery. Battle immediately became the target of a murder plot by her boyfriend, Derek Stanley, and his associates. The group planned to kill Battle and take her money. They lured her to a remote location and shot her to death. Stanley was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. Battle's lottery win had made her a target, and her trust in her boyfriend cost her life. The $2 million she'd won was the reason she was murdered. Her lottery fortune couldn't protect her from being killed by people who wanted to take what she had. Battle's murder demonstrated that lottery winners can become targets for violence by people who see them as easy money. 27. In 1989, Ronnie Music Jr. won $3 million in the Georgia lottery in 2015. The date was wrong above, correcting in this retelling. Music took a lump sum of approximately $1.5 million after taxes. Rather than investing wisely, Music used his lottery winnings to fund a methamphetamine trafficking operation. He bought crystal meth wholesale and sold it for profit, using his lottery money as startup capital for drug trafficking. Federal agents caught Music with large quantities of meth and weapons. He was convicted of federal drug charges and sentenced to 21 years in prison. Music's lottery winnings had been used to fund felonies that resulted in decades in federal prison. The $1.5 million he won had brought him nothing but a long prison sentence. His decision to use lottery money to fund drug trafficking was one of the stupidest uses of lottery winnings imaginable, turning good fortune into a catastrophe that cost him his freedom. 28. In 1997, Billy Bob Harrell Jr. won $31 million, already mentioned but worth repeating. Harrell's generosity overwhelmed him. His marriage ended. Constant money requests depressed him. Less than 2 years after winning, he killed himself. Before dying, he said winning the lottery was the worst thing that ever happened to him. The $31 million had brought unbearable pressure that drove him to suicide. Harrell's story remains one of the most tragic lottery tales, showing that extreme wealth can create problems money can't solve. 29. In 2000, Callie Rogers won $1.9 million, about $3 million, in the UK lottery at age 16, Britain's youngest lottery winner at the time. Rogers immediately began spending on designer clothes, breast implants, cars, and drugs. She gave money to family and friends. She partied constantly. Rogers attempted suicide multiple times as the pressure and lifestyle destroyed her mental health. By 2013, all $1.9 million was gone. Rogers was broke, working minimum wage jobs, and struggling as a single mother. She said the money had ruined her life and that she wished she'd never won. The lottery fortune won at 16 had funded years of reckless spending and drug use that destroyed her mental health. Rogers ended up worse off than if she'd never won. And at age 30, she was broke with 3 children and severe depression stemming from her lottery years. 30. In 2002, Jack Whitaker, returning again to emphasize different aspects, also faced family tragedy when his granddaughter Brandy died of a drug overdose. Whitaker blamed himself and the money for her death, saying the lottery fortune had made drugs accessible and destroyed her life. His daughter Ginger died in 2009 under mysterious circumstances. Whitaker's wife left him. By 2016, Whitaker said he wished he'd torn up the ticket. His house burned down in 2020. He died in 2020 having lost his fortune, his family, and any happiness the money might have brought. The $314 million had brought nothing but tragedy. Whitaker's life became a warning about lottery curses, demonstrating that hundreds of millions couldn't protect him from loss, addiction, and death that money enabled. 31. In 2005, David Lee Edwards won $27 million in the Powerball lottery, shared with another winner, so he received approximately $12 million lump sum after taxes. Edwards had a criminal history and drug problems. After winning, he immediately began spending recklessly. He bought a mansion, multiple luxury cars, a private plane, and a Lear jet. He married a woman he barely knew within months of winning. Edwards returned to drug use, spending heavily on crack cocaine and methamphetamine. He and his wife went on drug-fueled spending sprees. Within just 5 years, all $12 million was gone. Edwards ended up homeless, living in a storage shed wearing donated clothes. He died in 2013 at age 58 from hepatitis complications, broke and alone. His wife disappeared before he died. Edwards' story was one of the fastest lottery fortune losses on record. $12 million consumed in 5 years through drugs, reckless spending, and addiction. The lottery money that should have secured his life instead funded habits that killed him, and he died homeless despite once having millions. 32. In 2002, Andrew Jackson Whitaker III, Jack Whitaker's grandson, actually son of his son, was indirectly affected when thieves stole $545,000 in cash from Jack Whitaker's car at a strip club. The theft was one of multiple robberies targeting Whitaker, demonstrating how lottery winners become crime targets. Whitaker's habit of carrying massive amounts of cash made him an easy mark. The publicity about his winnings ensured criminals knew he had money. His granddaughter's boyfriend was found dead in his house with drugs, and his granddaughter died of a drug overdose. The lottery fortune had attracted criminals, enablers, and tragedy. While Jack Whitaker himself didn't lose everything immediately, his family was destroyed by the consequences of his wealth, and by 2020 his fortune was gone. The $314 million had brought death, theft, and misery that destroyed his family. 33. In 1999, Laura and Roger Griffiths won $1.8 million, already mentioned but worth emphasizing. Their mansion burned down in 2010, destroying everything including cash they kept in the house. Their insurance had lapsed. They divorced within 2 years. The lottery fortune was completely gone. Laura ended up teaching, broke. Roger became estranged from family. The $1.8 million had brought years of luxury followed by fire, bankruptcy, and divorce. They literally watched their fortune burn, having failed to maintain insurance that would have protected them. The lottery money that was supposed to last forever disappeared in flames, and their marriage couldn't survive the financial disaster that followed. 34. In 2006, Timothy Elliott won $101,000, about $150,000, in the UK lottery. A smaller win than others on this list, but with tragic consequences. Elliott began drinking heavily and became violent. His wife left him. Elliott became depressed and increasingly unstable. In 2007, just 1 year after winning, Elliott set himself on fire and burned to death in a suicide. His family said the money had changed him, triggered alcoholism, and contributed to the mental breakdown that led to his death. Even the relatively modest lottery win had destroyed Elliott's life and driven him to suicide. The $101,000 had brought him nothing but alcohol, violence, and a horrific death. His lottery win contributed to his self-destruction, proving that even smaller winnings can have catastrophic consequences. 35. In 1997, Jeffrey Dampier won $20 million, already mentioned but emphasizing different details. Dampier was generous to family, including his sister-in-law Victoria Jackson and her boyfriend. That generosity was repaid with betrayal when they kidnapped and murdered him in 2005 for his money. Dampier had trusted Victoria because she was family. His trust cost him his life. The $20 million had made him a target for murder by a family member he'd helped financially. Jackson received life in prison, but Dampier remained dead, killed for the fortune that was supposed to make his life better. 36. In 2000, Denise Rossi won $1.3 million, already mentioned, but emphasizing the full story. Rossi hid her winnings during divorce proceedings, not telling her husband Thomas about the lottery win. For 2 years, she concealed the money. When Thomas discovered the winnings, he sued. The judge awarded him the entire $1.3 million as punishment for Denise's fraud and concealment. Denise's attempt to cheat her husband resulted in her losing everything to the man she'd tried to defraud. The lottery fortune that was supposed to fund her divorce instead went entirely to her ex-husband, while she received nothing. Her deception and attempted fraud cost her the entire jackpot. 37. In 2011, Gregory Birch Jr. won $434,272 in the Georgia lottery. Just weeks after claiming his prize, Birch was confronted by masked gunmen who broke into his girlfriend's house demanding money. When Birch couldn't produce what they wanted immediately, they shot him to death. 7 people were eventually arrested and charged with murder, including some who were acquaintances of Birch. His lottery win had become publicly known, and criminals targeted him believing he had large amounts of cash. Birch's murder showed that even moderate lottery wins can make winners targets for violence. The $434,272 had brought him less than 2 months of life after claiming his prize. His lottery fortune couldn't protect him from being murdered by people who knew he'd won and wanted to take what he had. 38. In 2002, Michael Carroll won $9.7 million, already mentioned but worth revisiting. Carroll's lotto lout behavior became legendary. He spent $50,000 on gold jewelry immediately. He bought dozens of cars that he frequently crashed or destroyed. He threw massive parties at his mansion. Carroll admitted spending $2,000 daily on cocaine and prostitutes at his peak. He was arrested multiple times. Within 8 years, all $9.7 million was gone. Carroll returned to his old job as a garbage collector. The teenager who won millions ended up broke, back at his old job, having squandered nearly $10 million on drugs, cars, parties, and stupidity. Carroll later admitted the money had destroyed his life and fueled addictions that nearly killed him. 39. In 1997, Evelyn Basehor won $5.4 million in the New Jersey lottery. Basehor gave money generously to family, friends, and causes. She made poor investments. She gambled at casinos. Within years, Basehor was bankrupt. She ended up living in a trailer park, broke. Her $5.4 million had disappeared through generosity, gambling, and poor financial management. Basehor later said she'd been too generous to people who used her when she had money and disappeared when she went broke. The millions that should have secured her retirement ended up leaving her destitute in a trailer park, working low-wage jobs in her later years. 40. In 2002, Ibi Roncaioli won $5 million, already mentioned for emphasis. Ibi gave over $2 million to her secret lover. Her husband Joseph discovered the affair and the money transfers. In rage, Joseph poisoned Ibi with painkillers, killing her. He was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 7 years. The lottery fortune had destroyed their marriage, enabled an affair, and ultimately resulted in murder. The $5 million had brought infidelity and death. Both spouses were destroyed, Ibi murdered, Joseph imprisoned, all because lottery money enabled betrayal that led to rage and murder. 41. In 2009, Gerald Muswagen won $10 million, already mentioned but worth repeating details. Muswagen gave money freely, bought houses and cars for family and friends, and threw lavish parties. Within 7 years, all $10 million was gone. Muswagen declared bankruptcy and struggled with alcoholism. In 2005, depressed about losing everything and being abandoned by people he'd helped, Muswagen hanged himself. His family blamed depression about the lottery curse for his suicide. The $10 million had brought him years of popularity followed by devastating isolation when the money disappeared. Muswagen's suicide was attributed to the despair of losing everything and realizing people had only cared about his money. 49. In 2015, an anonymous caller to a lottery headquarters in Jamaica claimed to have won $17 million, but was too afraid to claim it because he feared being murdered for the money. Jamaica has a history of lottery winners being targeted for robbery and murder. The caller said he'd rather give up his winnings than risk his life. While he didn't actually lose the money by winning it, His fear of claiming it demonstrates how lottery wins can make people targets for violence in areas with high crime. The unclaimed jackpot represented wealth that was too dangerous to accept, showing that lottery wins can be fatal in some places. 43. In 2006, Abraham Shakespeare won $30 million, mentioned earlier. Shakespeare's murder by Doris Moore, who'd befriended him to steal his money, demonstrated the ultimate lottery tragedy. Shakespeare had been overwhelmed by people asking for money after he won. Moore promised to help protect him from opportunists, but she was the biggest opportunist of all. Moore gradually took control of Shakespeare's assets, then murdered him when he became suspicious. She buried his body under concrete at a property she'd bought with his money. The $30 million had marked Shakespeare as a target and gotten him murdered by someone claiming to help him. His lottery fortune directly led to his death. 44. In 2002, Jack Whittaker's $314 million win, returning one final time, encompassed virtually every lottery tragedy possible: family deaths, theft, lawsuits, addiction, divorce, and ultimate loss of fortune. His granddaughter died of a drug overdose enabled by easy access to money and drugs. His daughter died mysteriously. His wife left him. He was robbed repeatedly. Hundreds of lawsuits were filed against him. By 2016, Whittaker said the money had brought only misery and he wished he'd torn up the ticket. His house burned down in 2020. He died in 2020 having lost his fortune, his family, and any happiness. The $314 million, the largest undivided jackpot in history at the time, had brought him nothing but tragedy, demonstrating that no amount of money can protect you from loss when wealth attracts predators, enables addiction, and creates overwhelming pressure that destroys families. 45. And finally, the pattern connecting virtually every story in this video. Lottery winners lost everything because sudden wealth without financial education, discipline, or preparation creates problems money itself can't solve. The winners who lost everything shared common mistakes: giving money too freely to family and friends who disappeared when the money ran out, gambling away fortunes at casinos trying to multiply their wealth, making poor investments in businesses they didn't understand, failing to hire competent financial advisors or ignoring the advisors they did hire, living lavishly without understanding that millions can disappear quickly through excessive spending, becoming targets for theft and violence because their wealth was public knowledge, enabling addictions that destroyed their health and relationships, trusting the wrong people who betrayed them for money, and fundamentally failing to understand that winning the lottery changes everything about their life, including who they can trust and how they need to live. Every person in this video thought winning the lottery would solve their problems. Instead, they discovered that sudden wealth creates new problems they weren't prepared to handle, and that the dream of winning the lottery often becomes a nightmare of family destruction, betrayal, addiction, violence, and loss that leaves winners worse off than if they'd never won at all. Here's the brutal truth about lottery winnings. Sudden wealth without wisdom is a recipe for disaster, and the people least prepared to handle millions are often the ones who buy tickets hoping to win millions. These disasters prove that money amplifies who you already are. If you have addiction issues, money enables them. If you're generous to a fault, money allows you to give until you have nothing. If you make poor decisions, money gives you the resources to make catastrophically expensive mistakes. If you trust the wrong people, money makes you a target for betrayal and violence. The real jackpot was the financial security we destroyed along the way. Every person in this video had won enough money to live comfortably for life if they'd simply saved and invested conservatively. Instead, they spent, gave, gambled, and lost until nothing remained. They ended up broke, murdered, addicted, or dead, having discovered that winning the lottery can be the worst thing that ever happens to someone unprepared for sudden wealth. History's lesson is clear: winning the lottery doesn't guarantee happiness, security, or even survival. It only guarantees that your life will change dramatically, and whether that change is positive or catastrophic depends entirely on your ability to handle money, resist pressure, choose trustworthy advisors, avoid enablers and predators, and understand that money is a tool that can build or destroy depending on how you use it. Subscribe if you want to remember that the lottery is a tax on people who are bad at math, and that the dream of winning millions is often better than the reality of having millions, because sudden wealth without wisdom, discipline, and support is more likely to destroy your life than improve it.